So happy Wednesday. We'll go ahead and get started. And I figured for a little bit of a change of pace and we'll get started today, ask Owen to do the land acknowledgement and then do just a little bit of housekeeping.
This morning, I would like to acknowledge that we are gathered on the unceded territory of the Upper Cook Inlet Dineeneh people. I'm grateful to them for their many years of stewardship of this land and for the fish that are still running and the berries that are still in the bushes. They're here because of the way they cared for the land. And I want to express gratitude for that. And wherever you are, if you can put your feet on the ground and feel the ground, and feel the energy of this place that we share and now know as Anchorage, and take a minute just to take a deep breath and breathe fresh air and share this space together. Thank you.
Thank you, Owen. So want to move in just to a few housekeeping items, just so one I don't forget. Next week's a little bit of a different week. Labor Day is Monday. I hope you're all taking some well-earned time off on Monday. And Wednesday is the special committee meeting of the Assembly's Committee on Housing and Homelessness, where they're hoping to get the a review of the municipality's plan for winter emergency sheltering. So I think given those two instances that we will not meet at all next week, but we will ask if your small groups could try to convene, and we can then use that opportunity to come back on Monday with product out of those small groups to really start to hone in on what the plan is going to look like. So we can think about that a little bit as we proceed through today and revisit it coming into the end of the agenda. I think trying to reschedule this group to another date and time will be a bit of a nightmare. So that's an option I wanted to put on the table and go from there. Does that work for you, Belinda?
Yep, that works. Okay. Well, welcome everybody. We'll get kicked off again. You'll see that the agenda is aligned primarily around the small group work, the different lanes of work. And then many of the bullets or questions under those items are the follow-up on action items that came up in Monday's meeting. So that's how I'll try to keep us on track with following up on things. And then, of course, if there's anything else that needs to be discussed under those topics, we'll do that as well. Did anybody have any thing that you needed to comment on the agenda before I kick off? Okay, we'll get started. So we'll start with Meg, Nancy, status of the immediate unsheltered response, and then specifically if you've got an update on the camp abatement question that came up on Monday.
Sure, thank you. So I did send the camp abatement question off to the Parks and Recreation Director, asking not only is abatement happening or is it just cleaning with healthy spaces? Is there a closure date for Centennial? And if so, what does closure mean? No response so far. That was sent off late Monday night, so I would give it a few days. They might be actually running down or coming up with a plan on those things. I will certainly report back as soon as I learn that. In terms of the immediate unsheltered needs, I also have a question into Parks and Recreation about whether or not we can add any warming devices to the pavilions. What that means, we would like to add the propane stand-up heaters. And so I haven't heard back as well. Kind of need to make sure we don't get in trouble if we do it. The last thing we want is a bunch of Parks and Rec staff coming because we've done something wrong and possibly making it feel unsafe for the people we're trying to assist. So we are working through getting some information about what it would cost for laundering if we did a clothing exchange, so I can get some dollar amounts. And then we are also putting together a plan to, the coalition still has some money for the restaurant meals, to see if we can't get that moving again, with the monies we have to leverage into those opportunities to meet that need, because unsheltered folks not at Centennial aren't getting regular access to food service. So that's kind of where we're at. So it's still in that getting all of our ducks in a row kind of phase. But hopefully, especially if we have a little bit of time to work on it next week, we can move through that. I think it will also be an opportunity to leverage whatever current information we know about camp abatement and its current status to people who engage with us, and also about the closure of Centennial, so that that information can start to get out to the people as soon as possible. And if we start after next week, I'm sure we'll also need to have accurate information about whatever the municipal plan may be around winter sheltering as well. Really using as a way to convey accurate information so people can make choices based on good information in the moment. Anyone else who's been working on that want to add anything? Just coming in now, so.
Anybody have questions, comments on that topic? Okay, Meg, anything else?
Oh, well, I guess it will come up later, actually, the survey's being deployed now, but we can go into that specifically later.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, next topic is to review planning assumptions and there were a couple of updates that were still open on Monday, one around the population data and the other around a request on what the health department's current plan is for ramping town at Aviator. So Meg, do you want to start with the HMIS population data?
Actually, I see Grace, and I'm not sure if Celia is online. I know that group started to figure out how they're gonna do some stuff. Do you want to go ahead and give that update, Grace?
The only update is that we plan to meet very soon, and the next time we meet as a group, we'll be able to have some assumptions ready.
Great. Yeah, I saw that chatter happening, coordinating those calendars.
Okay, so the data group is going to take that action item for looking at the population data. Okay, perfect. Okay, and then the Aviator question with AHD.
Hi, this is Andy Nestor. I'm online, not in person today. Okay, so the number of rooms as the Aviator transitions down is starting on September 1st. There are 169 rooms available. There will be nobody evicted because of turnover, as well as moving approximately 40 people from emergency shelter to leased units in the C wing. We actually have some open rooms, so nobody will have to leave the Aviator. Then October, it goes down to 149. That's also a transition that should not cause any issues because there is an additional 20 units that will go to lease units at the Aviator in the C wing. November is 149, December is 149, and then January is 139 rooms that will be available, February 47 rooms, March 47 rooms, and April 47 rooms. So, and I believe when the administration releases their plan, they'll explain the how they're planning on doing that stuff. Are there any questions?
Andy, this is Meg. I missed the January census. Can you just go back September through April just to make sure I've captured it correctly in the notes?
Yep. September 169. October, November, and December are 149 rooms.
Okay.
January is 139 rooms. And then February is the big drawdown where by the end of the month, we'll need to be at 47 rooms. And that basically is the same March and April.
Okay, so from January 1 through the end of February, it'll draw down from 139 to 47. So it's a 60-day drawdown. Or days, because February doesn't quite have 30.
I am gonna have to defer. So that's how many rooms are available to us, but I will have to defer to the plan that will be released by the administration.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Andy on that? Anything else with regards to planning assumptions? Okay. Guess we'll move on to the data group. Are you the data group? Are you spokesperson? I didn't get names for the people in the group. I'm sorry.
So it was Taylor, Celia, and Grace.
And I don't have a response to the agenda item. Sorry.
Okay. But are those the questions the group is planning to address?
Yes.
Okay. Roger.
So any way that campsite 13 can help with the data collection, we're available and we're serving 35, 40 people every morning. So we could dovetail right in anybody that wanted to do the data work.
It's a campsite
13.
13.
Thank you, Roger.
And Celia.
The update is I have an email from Salvation Army, which represents some progress towards being able to use the data that they've already collected and enter it into the HMIS system. I hope to have more next week.
Great.
Okay. Anything else on data?
I just want to say this out loud before I forget. Celia, let's make sure we touch base offline about how to effectuate getting that into HMIS as soon as we can. Thanks. Okay, I got a thumbs up in return.
Okay. Mr. Weddleton, I know everybody's waiting with bated breath to find out what the screening analysis looked like and what the short list looks like for the what now 90 to 100 locations that were brainstormed. So John?
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Can you see on the screen this spreadsheet?
Yes.
Okay, so this
Is
is
there
a,
any- You could make it maybe a little bit bigger.
I'm not sure I know how to do that. It's full
Is
on
it-
my, in here, let's see. Is that better?
Okay, yes, that would be helpful.
Okay,
And John, but before you start into the specifics of the locations, could you just at a high level communicate what the go, no-go criteria were that you looked at?
yeah, one is it available and is the owner willing to let it be used for, short term and for this use? And I think that was the main thing that we stumble against. Then the criteria that wasn't a no-go, I guess, so much, is it available 24 hours? Is there space for meals? And are there showers, which were outlined by this group as important features? Showers, we're looking into, can we get portable showers? And that is something that exists and is probably available in a pinch. Is there availability for meals and then 24-hour use? So those are, I think, the main ones. I don't, but a lot of it is, does it have the space too? If we're looking up to 150 people, we were thinking, we weren't quite sure, but 50 square feet per person would be probably the minimum. So if it's something less than, 7,000 or 8,000 square feet, is that realistic? And some would be, we'll have some notes on these, if they're available just for warming or, which could be a smaller group. And I think, so So that was largely it. And availability is really the stumbling block. And a lot of our work, not everybody's gotten back to us quickly. We're asking for answers very quickly from people, and doesn't always happen that fast. So, but we've gotten quite a bit. Hugh has rattled some trees and gotten answers pretty quick, and people are getting back to us. So we can look through some of these. Now, one of the things too, and this is talking to Meg, you know, the administration should announce today what their plan is, which will be good. And, you know, if they're looking at, you know, more congregate settings, that we should focus a little bit more on non-congregate, which would be essentially the hotels. So we rose, as we go through this, we kind of raise those to the top a bit. And then we've got some of the just larger spaces as well that'll be in there. So does that help?
That's perfect. Thanks, John.
Okay, and I'm gonna think we've got some notes, so I'm gonna hide some of these columns. This is we switched to a Google spreadsheet, and I'm not as familiar with this and how to hide these columns. These are basically what you've seen before.
Click the minus symbol up in the top there, John, above the letter R. In the dark gray, right above the letter R.
Where are you seeing R? Above the
column R.
Column R, LMNOPQR. Right in here.
There's a little gray circle with a minus sign in it. Just click that.
I have this drop down menu blocking me here, which I assume you see too. Oh. Uh-oh. This thing, that's a plus though.
Hover over the gray R bar.
You're good, John. You collapsed it. Now just
Oh, I did. Oh, okay.
Scoot to the left.
See how good I am with these things?
John, before you go on, question from Andy Nestor is, can we scroll down so we can see this, or is this a document shared with the group? If I can have it emailed, I'll go ahead and get it emailed out to the group. Maybe Chris, if you've got access to it, can get it distributed while John's talking. Thank you.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks. And this has been updated even briskly this morning leading up to this meeting. So some of this I've read in emails, but this is kind of our comments to track where we are on things. And so right now, the Alex Hotel, of course, that's been on and off lists for quite a bit of time. I think over 2 years, and that's Spinard Road across from the Barrett that we've talked about a bunch. And they had responded to last year's RFI. And that one, we haven't gotten a definitive answer, but Hugh may be able to chime in. But I think they're looking for some kind of sale, and it could be lease to own or something like that. Arctic Recreation Center, which we talked about a couple times, holds a lot of promise, but they are only interested in a long-term lease, possibly 1 year, but preferably 2 years, because they're pretty busy with their, they lease it out for events and things like that, and they don't want to cancel all their events for just 4 to 6 months. So this, I believe, is off the list for our purposes right now. Barrett Inn is probably still in play. I mean, that's something that I think Hugh, it's not added here yet, but I think he spoke with them and they would be interested in a lease to own, kind of preferably a more long-term thing. But this Barrett Inn's been looked at quite a bit, and I think we moved on from there to the guest house as a kind of the broader flow of things over the last year or so, but this is still somewhat attractive. The Benson DMV, they 3 siblings own it. Their mom just died, which is sad. It's a nice family, and so they're a little slow on getting back to us, and there's possibility there. It's not a hard no. The layout there, of course, is offices and then the waiting room, and of all buildings where you might feel people would be stigmatized to put them in a DMV building might be kind of that way, but it could be useful. Location's good, and maybe if as we move forward, for daytime warming. The Sherwin-Williams that Kevin Cross had brought up, is tentative. There's space in there. It's, I think 6,000 square feet or so. So this is still a possibility. It's kind of close downtown, close to Brother Francis and so on. So you've got the negatives of being in that concentrated area, but for short term could be acceptable. We've got some maybes here, 4th Avenue Marketplace, and Chris, which one was that? Oh, that's the blue building down there. So we're waiting on that. There may be space where the church left. Alaska Bark, we're calling it. This is the one.
Sorry to interrupt. This is Felix.
Yeah.
Maybe you explained this already, but what does the 1, 2, 3 star ranking system mean?
I'll let Chris do that. Chris devised that. Chris, you on?
Yeah, so the stars were sites that were requested that we evaluate from ACEH. The Red Hot Chili Peppers looking symbol is items that we, as a breakout group, that we prioritize or we thought had the most potential. And then the smaller asterisks, that 1, 2, or 3, those are sites that, based on some of the criteria that we were looking at, how likely we think they might go from a maybe to a yes. So if it's like the 4th Avenue Marketplace 3-star, it met a lot of criteria, but we just don't have all the answers yet to say it's eligible as a yes.
Okay, thanks.
All right. Yeah. Thanks, Felix. So we've moved out of these, and these are generally we're looking. The hotels, of course, are non-congregate. Sherwin-Williams, would be congregate shelter, and the DMV is a little hard to say. Partly that. I mean, that might be just kind of hold on, for warming during the day if that's needed. And then these maybes. Alaska Bark is the one at the it's on Farweed, close to the Seward Highway. And that's got the new pet store in it. And Chris, did you get any more information on that? I did not. I know I said I'd go by there and you get a chance to.
Negative. I haven't heard anything since what you see in the notes there.
Okay. America's Best Value Inn, not interested in leasing, but would consider a lease option to purchase. And this is the one that had the fire in front of it. So not a solid no, but for long term, this is certainly potential, and it's been looked at before by the city. Bayshore Mall, big open, gutted, Hugh Call. We have no more information on that, but space-wise, that's attractive. Body Renew, our sense on that is they would sell the whole building or lease the whole building, but not just the part that's gutted, and they have plans for it. So the location's amazing, space is there, but unlikely to get that. Change Point Warehouse, no information on that at this point. The former Blockbuster, Hugh, I've not seen an update on Hugh from this.
Hey, John.
Yeah?
Real quick. So the former Blockbuster actually came off the list.
Okay.
You might need to hit refresh or reload.
Oh, I see.
I thought I had moved it off, but it should be in the no category. And the reason being that space is fully leased out for the next year.
Okay.
Can I jump in here to summarize what I've heard so far, which is, it sounds like there are 3 potential locations for non-congregate, and those all tend to be hotels: America's Best Value Inn, the Alex Hotel, and the Barrett Hotel. That there are a few maybes, but still still unknowns with regard to congregate, the primary being the DMV and the Arctic Gym. And that the DMV might also provide some utility as a warming location, and that kind of hits the top 5 buildings as of right now with what we know.
I think that's somewhat true. these are still somewhat maybes. I mean, they, for long-term lease and purchase, the Axe Hotel Barrett and so on. Arctic Recreation Center, if we were going to go long-term, then, a year or longer, then it's still in play. Sherwood Williams, we're not quite sure, but some America's Best Value, I mean, that's the non-congregate. And with the longer-term view of things, that's still in play. And then, the Johnson's Tire is always lingering out there, but it's huge dollars. Northway Mall should be off the list. They said no, they're not interested. And then that also includes the cars there. Apparently, they don't even have a price out there for a listing. They are prepping it for sale or action, and don't want to lease it to us. So that is Tudor Square. This is the one near where you folks are sitting, but that's fairly small. That's only 2,700 square feet, and a lot of it's taken up by the kitchen. And then no, we've got kind of down Sears is off, Sourdough Mining Company is off, so most of these. So, I think the ones in this maybe, we shouldn't disregard. I mean, this 4th Avenue Marketplace, that may have space where the old church was or more. We haven't checked on this Alaska Bark on Fireweed yet, so wouldn't write those off. But, if we're looking longer term, these hotels are certainly continue to be, definitely something to consider for part of the package.
So Chris shared the sheet in the chat to the Teams meeting. I am emailing it out now as well.
Chris, the link you shared requires request for access, and I don't know who started the document, but I don't want you to be inundated with 20 different requests for access, and if you can change its viewability. And if not, we will all request access.
You bet.
Thank you.
Well, I think it's easy to do. I'll do it right now.
Thank you.
So having spent some time with this list previous and kind of a little pre-time with this, I guess I would ask, are we, the 5 that I mentioned previously, I feel like are probably the best front runners, particularly running down 3 hotels that we know either have availability or could be used, even if they're long-term, to start those conversations to figure out what the costing might be, the viability and cost of DMV, both, in those 2 iterations, either as warming only and congregate, and then starting to track down the Arctic one. Those all feel like to me, the 5 most real options, but I just wanted to share that, and then I think we should discuss it. Because once we start to deep dive on these, it's a lot of work. So I think we need to come to some consensus on where we want to dive.
Meg, this is John. I think that somewhat makes sense, but until we see what the administration's plan is, if they are doing only like nighttime accommodations and not daytime, then the focus or focus would be on warming or some daytime place. Where would people go where they could be warm? And that would change our list here a bit and possibly broaden it.
I can speak to some of that. So the administration's plan is going to talk about releasing an ITB, and we did delay releasing that ITB until after the NOFO closes for the COC to September 5th. And the ITB is going to have add options on it for daytime shelter. So it will depend what that cost ends up being on whether daytime shelter will happen. So I don't think you're going to get the answer to whether daytime shelter is occurring or not. It's going to depend on the cost and what can be afforded basically by the city. So, but I do think that having a location during the day for people to go that is not potentially that could be helpful in any case.
So it would be helpful then as we consider options, that's a question, to evaluate something where it might be combined 24-hour, something that may be night only, and something that may be day only, so we can compare and contrast what those costs look like and if there are any natural cost savings in any of those or not.
Yes, I think you interpreted me well.
Okay, thanks, Andy. I'm making sure I'm capturing it. So if we take that on top of where we're at with the buildings, then I think what we have is the opportunity to evaluate those, potentially those three scenarios against what could be available. However, this group has said that a 24-hour operation is really where it wants to be. So that would be the combined. We could definitely likely in setting up what the combined cost of an operation looks like. Those service providers who volunteered could help divide out what day versus night might look like within that. But I don't want to have us move from our agreements as a group as to what constitutes an adequate response that we agree to at the front end. Unless we agree to change that.
This is John. Andy, when is the invitation to bid? When are those due? When will we have an answer on what the administration might point to?
Well, I really wish that they would release the document. I don't know when they're going to release the document. That is something between the administration and the assembly, which I have no bearing over. But the ITB will potentially, the ITB will be for a singular facility. And then there is another facility that is there. So what was your question, John? So I could try to answer it without getting myself fired.
We don't want anyone to get fired. It's just a rough idea on when we would have an idea on what we would need. People have like 3 weeks to respond and then 2 weeks for.
I haven't provided
that.
a recommendation. I think the minimum is 10 days that it has to be open. And I did get them to delay releasing it to September 5th so that the NOFO that ACH has out can close. And also it will provide some time for this group to potentially provide feedback so that if I needed to alter the ITB, I could. So there's a lot of things in play. So once they release it, I would love to have another conversation on anything that might be a better thing.
I'm gonna try to ask a question. Is the ITB going to specify potential locations to bid against?
Yes, because their plan is going to it does definitely designate 2 specific locations. The ITB will also have that specific location in it as well now.
I'm gonna ask a follow-up question. Can you say whether or not the specific location or locations would be congregate or non-congregate in nature?
Well, for one part of the plan, there are 2 congregate facilities that are women and children only, and one that is single adult male. And then there is a plan for a sort of non-congregate plan that will potentially be put in place really quick. Gosh, I hate talking like in all these like, hey, look at my dream here. But yes, congregate is the short term, but there is a non-congregate plan that should take us through the winter potentially.
Okay. is it helpful for this group to possibly put together some non-congregate options or put together what it would look like in cost to do, both day and night or combined for congregate facilities to inform the decisions the health department needs to make?
That would definitely help, because we kind of know what it might be. And I know you and I talked about like the $100 a day. It's just interesting to try to see what we are, what the different options are.
Got it. Okay. So I think based on the additional information we just received, I think we're somewhat in still the same position, which is to explore some non-congregate options. They may or may not align with the particular location the MOA is thinking about, but overall what it costs in order to do that and run that as with our minimum criteria, that seems like it's useful and helpful information. And possibly the feasibility of locations so that there can be our locations tossed into the mix of what might be possible. And then for congregate, I think what we've heard about 2 congregate facilities where they're going to be asking for service providers or someone to bid with a plan for congregate for women and children and 1 for single adults. And so working on what operations around that look like for combined, because again, our criteria overlaid on that. So then we have like a cost factor. And what's the feasibility for staffing and those things. I don't know if on the congregate side of the equation, if we want to offer up any other locations, if there are already MOA identified ones. However, what I did hear is there is some desire to hear about maybe day only opportunities. But that doesn't fit within our basic criteria. So there's a tension there that I see.
There's a hand up in the chat, Chris, if you'd like to speak.
Thank you, Owen. Just to add on to what Meg just finished saying, I like the idea of looking at multiple options. Even though you can't see it on the screen because all of the columns are collapsed, we did use, you don't need to expand it, John. We did use the guidance that was in the Assembly resolution creating this task force as something we looked at as well, meaning are these scattered sites, are they sites that can accommodate smaller populations so that there are more opportunities or more options available for houseless individuals across the city, et cetera. And so given some of the guidance or criteria that we were handed, I like the idea of continuing to look at multiple sites for congregate. For non-congregate, that can be, of course, just localized on some of the certain sites that we've listed here below, or new ones as they come up.
Any other thoughts on how to kind of go at this now that we have some sites, we have some information? Nancy?
Hi, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm in a new spot, so I just want to check my volume. Okay, so I was thinking about the day shelter need, and just a thought to throw in the process. In prior years, there was some work that happened ahead of winter with existing facilities to see if during the day they could allow for people to be in the facility for warming, especially when it was very cold. And so that might be a thought to pull the existing facilities to see if they have any, if there's money for a congregate site but not day services, you might be able to squeeze a little bit out of your existing capacity. Just a thought.
Nancy, when you say existing facilities, do you mean existing MOA facilities or just existing Service provider facilities, a little clarification, please.
Service providers mostly, but I mean, I think, like, when I think about some of the hotels, they have cafes, and you may be able to, you may be able to utilize some space that's associated with the current non-congregate sites. But I think like in past years, and I don't know, this is a very different year, but, you know, asking the Downtown Hope Center, Brother Francis, the Rescue Mission, the usual places.
Any other thoughts on how to approach this?
Hi, this is David Rittenberg with CSS. Just to sort of respond to your question, Nancy. In contrast to years past, I can only really speak for Brother Francis, but we are open 24 hours a day for the 120 people that would be staying with us. So whereas previously, we did ask the majority of our guests to leave during the day, we have moved to a 24-hour model. Can't really speak for the Downtown Hope Center, but I think that's a question we can ask them. But I do know that they are also operating pretty close to full capacity during the day already.
I could work with someone to do a little bit of that polling to see if there is any additional capacity, so we can take that into account, whether that would be day. I do know that a couple of operations like Brother Francis and I believe Covenant House have already put together proposals to expand their capacity for day and overnight already. So we may not find much, but can make the inquiries. And if we have through next week, I can hopefully get some responses. I can do the same inquiry to Gospel Rescue Mission. And if you have others, just let me know. We'll do that.
I have a question about the ITB and if it includes a co-located warming facility, and if it doesn't, if places that qualify as potential warming locations could be used as both day and night warming locations, and if we should continue to look at those.
Andy, did you catch the question? Will the ITB contemplate having co-located warming locations at the sites the MOA identifies?
For the congregate.
I do not have an answer to that question.
Okay.
Then I think we should continue to pursue warming locations. And if they're available during the night and day, that could help with some of the day shelter needs.
So space for potential warming on site. Yeah, the locations. Okay, got it. I think that has been a concern I've heard kind of expressed throughout, not necessarily in the room, but particularly around what if someone is at one of these sites and they're trespassed? Where are they to go? And how will they get access to something like warming? So I think we haven't really talked about it. I think it's been on a lot of people's minds. So now it's been said. And so we can make that evaluation if we start to identify which sites we're going to evaluate.
So is everyone clear on that conversation in terms of, Meg, you've mentioned 2 or 3 different variations of what you see as the priorities for this group. Do you maybe want to reiterate that? And let's make sure we're all ending on the same page.
Sure. I think it's worthwhile to specifically evaluate non-congregate locations because we hear there might be one by the MOA, but we've also identified 3 potential ones. And so I think we should do the deep dive on those 3 potential non-congregate locations. And then in particular, if we are looking for some kind of day opportunity, if that's what this group is okay exploring, since it doesn't meet our basic criteria of 24-hour, but if that's what we want to do, I think that puts the DMV in the mix, and should we deep dive on that as for its viability for, day access? And then the outstanding question I have is it worthwhile to look at a congregate type location based on what we know has already potentially been identified by the MOA? We don't know where, but we know that there are congregate sites identified.
Can I give a response to that from my perspective? So I guess from my perspective as one of the assembly members that created this task force, until we see the administration's plan and get a chance for the assembly to review the plan and provide feedback to the task force, I would suggest that all these ideas still remain on the table and that we not constrict it just based off of sort of what was presented today.
So that would be a request then to evaluate something like the Arctic. I call it the Arctic Gym, because that was the most feasible art congregate location we found. Is that correct, Caleb?
Yep.
Okay.
And so do all of the other sites then fall off at this point than the 5 you just mentioned? Is that what you're proposing?
That is what I am proposing, but I am open to be persuaded otherwise.
Well, this is John, if I could chime in. I'd say, one, I think this Arctic Recreation Center is off the table unless we have the ability to commit for a year or more. We're still getting information on a variety of sites. You can see in the notes if it's have a call in, waiting for response, or, the realtors checking with the owner and so on. So, a lot of this is very fluid, and of course, new ideas pop up as we talk to people and we get more ideas. And then if we do, the idea of a deep dive, the question there, but who would do that? If we start talking to people about these locations, then it's, expectation, oh, they must have resources to do what they're asking for, right? Does and I certainly am not in a position to do that, nor is Chris or Hugh. I don't think anyone is at this point. So, how would you define deep dive? We've been very surface level now, open with people that were just brainstorming ideas, getting broad information. But if we start talking to one of these hotels, well, they may have this expectation that there's some commitment from the city, to purchase it, and that starts things happening that, we really don't have the authority or clear funding to, even suggest could happen. So I think fleshing out what is a deep dive and how should you and Chris and the others of us continue?
So having been put in this position before on other opportunities, it's just contacting the owners, being really honest that, hey, there may be a funding opportunity if we put together a proposal. It would go in as something in response to either a request for proposals or in response to an invitation to bid. What we would need to figure out is what is it going to cost if we were able to get access to this building? We are not the decision makers. We are getting the information in order to present that. Concurrent with that, we would need to know what your minimum criteria would be to operate it for this purpose. How, do you have any? If not, what we would do is we would bring an proposed operations plan and make sure everyone was good before it was all submitted for, in response to an invitation to seek funding. We've done that a couple of times now, particularly with the Emergency Rental Assistance Housing Stability Fund.
Okay, yeah, that's helpful.
I can help with that, having done it a couple of times. It's really just getting the nuts and bolts of what a building requires, what they have, do they meet, you know, and then we need to examine if they would meet the necessary Title 16 pieces based on what we know. So is it sprinklered? Would it have to be sprinklered, and chasing down some of those answers so that we don't run into a late barrier after a proposal is submitted?
Okay, that has come up. You know, what is the requirement for sprinklers? Does the emergency use say we don't have to do that? And that was unclear in our discussions.
Yeah, so the health department's published actually some policies and procedures. They're on the health department's page. And we can make sure we all connect with those that are really instructive. And maybe it's that we have to form questions after reviewing those and talking with buildings to see if we hit the right spot, or if it still needs to be resolved by them.
Yeah, that would be helpful to see that. Thanks.
Okay, so you're gonna do that deep dive on the 3 hotels. On the rest of the list for potential congregate, is the plan then that you're going to continue the evaluation of that list to see if you can call it down to the most likely of those that are feasible?
You know, I think at this point on those, it's waiting for responses from people. So we've kind of called the most obvious ones are on this list and waiting for more information. And I think we just saw today Sears Mall is off the list. It's got a long-term lease. So I suspect that as we leave the questions open, we're getting more no's than yeses. So we'll see how that evolves.
I think the only caveat to that was the request from Felix to think about evaluating or to evaluate the Arctic Gym. And of course, if it's going to require a long-term lease, it would be information we would need to present, what that would look like and what that would cost. If I captured that right.
Well, yeah, I can do that. That you know, if you think, I mean, I don't want to have them do something that's not realistic, but if your sense is that that is realistic, that we could commit to a year at some point, I'd be happy to do that.
Okay. The other item, we had an action item on under this topic was about the feasibility of erecting the sprung structure somewhere else. And Felix, I don't know if you had a chance to look into that.
Yeah, I did reach out to both Adam Trombley and Saxton Shear. Adam is out on vacation and I have not heard back from Saxton, so it's on my list to reach out to him again.
I had an email through Hugh Wade. He had reached out and spoke with Larry Baker, it looked like, and the feedback was that the structure itself is site specific. So I don't know what that means, because that's different than what I've learned about how other sprung structures are deployed for this purpose in other parts of the country. But I just wanted to share that.
All right, yeah, and maybe I'll try Larry if Saxton doesn't get back to me.
Based on what I know about that design, that doesn't sound right.
Yeah, that'd be very
It
weird.
sounds like a good diversion tactic.
There's a comment in the chat. Shelley Roughton says, on the Alex and the Barrett, I recommend using Robin Ward as a resource as much as possible. She has been working with Carl and Alex for almost 2 years. Thank you, Shelley.
Roger that, Shelley. I will be in touch with her. Maybe I already have been a little bit.
Anything else on the site evaluations?
Thank you, John, Chris, Shelley, Lisa, Hugh, for getting that list whittled down. I know it's a little bit of retread, and I know it's a lot of unknowns, but I think it's important to have at least tried to look at a wide swath of things. So thank you.
Okay, operations issues and plans. So I know that group was just formed on Monday, and Meg, if you could remind us who signed up for that group, and then we'll talk about the scope and expectations for them.
Sure. So, I signed up myself, Celia and Sharia from our office, so our Director of Operations and our Systems Improvement Administrator. And we have Terry with Solomedic, David with CSS, Josh with Covenant House, Lisa Sauter with Beams. And I connected us this morning. I'm a little behind on getting all the groups connected. So we did get connected via email. And I suggested that one thing we could possibly look at doing is coming up with operational budget plan for 150 for congregate and 150 for non-congregate. So we kind of had two reference pieces that could then possibly be molded into site-specific plans from there. So start kind of with a base. So we've got a rough order of magnitude of costs for operating, kind of how many staffing, what's the feasibility of finding that kind of staff, those things, what the ratios were used, et cetera, and how that differs between congregate and non-congregate. And then, yeah, we can go from there,
So 150 capacity for congregate and non-congregate.
which would presume any facility that could open under Title 16. That was the use for that. We could also probably identify if there are any additional costs related to any particular subpopulation that might be served in that location.
Is there anything else at that group? No.
Nancy Burke in the chat says, I will volunteer to work on the housing operation.
I'll add you to the list, Nancy. Thank you.
And I think Lisa Sauter is here. Last week, is Lisa, you?
I confirmed via email
Okay.
that she was willing to work on the group. I didn't just add her to
That's what I was thinking
the,
too.
without confirmation. And Rob Marks from Rural Cap as well.
And Jessica Parks has also offered to help with
Great.
operations.
Okay. We move on to the engagement with persons with lived experience and the survey, I think is the main thing there.
Yes, I have an update. We took the 4 questions, adding a 5th around people identifying their strengths and people that great. And so it is ready to be deployed with outreach teams this week. And they just wanted to confirm back, so we all are very aware that will be anonymous answers and no personally identifiable information. Of course, but they just wanted us to be really clear on that.
Is there any other activity considered or planned for this engagement? Is the survey yet? Survey's the primary action under this.
I would say yes, and as we work on the immediate unsheltered response, the other engagement for people with lived experiences is conveying accurate, timely information as we learn it. So if we learn things as this group, what we'll do is make sure the outreach knows. If we learn about the answers to camp abatement or centennial closing, we'll make sure that that's accurate information going out as we contact people.
And there was this is Grace, there was a recruitment piece as well, that somehow is gonna be.
So the survey will also go out to case managers, so that if, they have someone who wants to do it, and then again, the call's already gone out. If there's someone with lived experience who would like to participate with us live, either online or here, we will facilitate that. We don't have anyone yet, so.
Jason Cates has also offered to help with operations. And I will note that the communications committee discussed deployment of the survey in some outreach scenarios for a sheltered homeless population as a part of the public outreach. So there's a tie in there.
Yeah. So we're ready to move to that topic then? The communications plan for the public? And who's part of that group? You'll remind me.
Am I speaking?
I would love if you did.
Yeah, remind us who's part of that group.
Felix, myself, and Julie. And
And then I think Gracie,
Yes, I
Yeah.
am also.
Oh, and I might have misstepped, guys. I might have accidentally excluded Daryl.
oh my gosh, but he couldn't come to he had one meeting he has to miss, which is today's.
Okay, so be sure to loop him in. That's
Okay.
my apologies.
Okay, we have an update from this group? What you think your plans are?
I
can feel his excitement from where I'm sitting.
Good. Sure, I can do that. So, yeah, we met this morning and, basically what a lot of the work that we're doing, just preface, is focused on communications to housed individuals, right? So, with sort of the caveat that we did do a little bit of discussion around just communications specifically targeting unhoused folks, but now that we have sort of a list of potential locations, we're gonna go through all of those, those top 5 locations and identify community councils, assembly members, institutions, any HOAs, business groups or associations, and basically develop a targeted communications list that we can reach out to. Some of the outreach is just going to be sort of a simple email. Hey, we want to let you know. Some of the outreach we're looking at actually doing active communications, and in particular, the community councils, talking about having conversations with the community councils to get some of their feedback. In addition to that, we talked about possibly doing sort of individual meetings or district meetings with assembly members, and sort of offering the same opportunity to the mayor as well. And then last, we talked about a presentation just to keep them in the loop, because, you know, it's not like we don't have the time to do a presentation at every Rotary Club and all that stuff, but at least to keep them in the loop to do a presentation to HLC.
Questions, comments on the communication plan?
Regarding the unsheltered folks, we did discuss reaching out to 2 or 3 locations where people experiencing homelessness are currently sheltered, and hosting like a cookie and coffee, come chat and learn about what we're working on, and share with us any information you'd like to share about your experience unsheltered or sheltered that would be useful to our plan. And Julie and I have a plan for cookies and note taking at those events. So we are engaging people with lived experience. There's a hand up in the chat. Kenny Peterson?
Yeah, hi, thanks. Yeah, thanks, Felix, for spearheading the communication on this. One of the things that I was mindful of just from my own position is to remembering things that happened with Golden Lion and the community there, and trying to remember some of the things that they had complained about, which was involving early on, how come we didn't know this or that, and so on. So as we're looking at the strategies of what we communicate, to remember some of the feedback we receive from the communities and trying to be preemptive on some of those things too. But I think you've probably looked at that as well, so thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I just think I won't comment on that, but thanks. Yes, we will make sure to be proactive.
Actually, that does raise an idea, which Felix and we deployed during that time that Kenny mentioned, is the opportunity for a quick community briefing and Q&A via Zoom. We did that when there was some misunderstandings. So if we find that even with clear communications and getting out there, it's kind of going sideways, it's a recommendation.
Sure.
John Weddleton, I see your hand up.
Yeah, on Felix, on your list, community councils and so on is good. Is how the city has the homeless lived experience committee or whatever. Or is that group active and can we draw them in somehow? And I'm not sure the hand commission steps into these things or doesn't. But, you know, they may be
Yeah.
on this list.
Thanks. So the Houseless Lived Experience Advisory Board, which is what I think you're trying to speak to. So they are partially staffed. I don't think they're fully staffed yet, and they have not met yet. And there's a variety of reasons why they have not. I think at this point, I don't know if it makes sense to activate that group for this, and I'm happy to talk to you offline about that. But we did talk about having discussions just to make sure that we do bring that lived experience to the table. And so I think we will be able to bring that to bear. And then, you know, beyond that, if there's more that folks think we need to do, we can go back and continue brainstorming on that.
Thanks.
Any other discussion on communication plans?
We will have a one pager that we'll present at the next Monday meeting as a part of the communications packet.
Okay, any other topics before we wrap up? We're finishing up quick today.
I'd like to do, to add to our timeline, the homeless prevention and response system advisory council meets on the 22nd of September. I think that's also a good place to present whatever our recommendations are. It's still in advance of the date for assembly action on the 27th.
Which group is that?
You could just call it the advisory council.
The advisory council.
Yeah, it's the COC governance structure. Doing it as an informational item, you know, and they're their own body with their own will. So if they choose to take action, that will be possible, but just offering it up as an information item for them.
I'll update the charter. I've been revising the charter and then we'll put it up on the website so people have it. Okay.
Yeah.
I also have a question for service providers who might be on the line. If you would be willing to host a little meet and greet with people staying at your shelter or receiving your services, could you please reach out to me? David, Allison, Jessica, anybody, not putting you on the spot to agree to it now, but think about it. It would be very helpful. Thank you, Rob.
So could you just I'm sorry, this is Allison. Could you just clarify what type of meet and greet?
It would be Julie and I chatting with people about the emergency winter shelter plan and hearing their experiences of living either unsheltered or sheltered, and it would follow the 5 questions that were used in the outreach.
We're happy. I'm happy to host one. We could host one in our cafe for you.
Amazing. Thank you.
Any other discussion items for today? Okay, we'll do a quick wrap up then. Decisions made today, no meetings next week of the full task force, but small groups will meet and progress your plans and be ready to report back to the task force the following Monday. Also next week, we expect there's a special meeting of the Housing and Homelessness Committee, Felix, and you expect to have the administration's plan presented at that meeting.
Sure.
So when the task force gets back together the following Monday, we should know what the administration's plan is. And I think that'll answer a lot of the questions I've been seeing going up and down through the chat here, is seeing that plan. So.
Well, and I definitely want to invite any members of the task force who want to come to that special assembly meeting, or excuse me, special Housing and Homelessness Committee meeting next Wednesday. So just put it up there. It is next Wednesday, September 7th from 12:40 to 2 p.m. in the assembly chambers at the Lusac Library.
Thanks, Felix.
We figured there would be large interest in the meeting, and that's why we weren't trying to compete with the task force.
Yeah. Okay, does anybody have anything else? very efficient day today. Okay, thank you all very much.
Yeah, thanks again so much, guys. Really appreciate it. Just look for, I think nearly every group's been connected via email now to start working on the small groups. If you're not connected to something and you need to be, want to be, let me know. Thank you.
Thanks,
See you
everyone.
in a week and a half.
Have a great long weekend.
Yeah, happy
Completely
Labor Day.
relaxing.
It's gonna be nice and sunny, right?
I'm going out of digital communication.
Are you?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I am.
Megan, she's not on your distribution list.
Add it now.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry about that.
That's nice.